How has your relationship been with the Chinese, and what is your thoughts on the Chinese in Africa?
Me personally, the Chinese was a blessing for me. I remember going to multiple opportunities to get funding to be able to provide lights in Africa. But the Chinese just gave me the credit line just after the first proposal. They gave me $1 billion credit line to be able to start whatever I wanted to do in the whole continent. My idea was at that time, I just wanted to provide lights to my people. We could figure out the details later. Let's get the lights going first so we can see what we're figuring out. Like, it's about action. You know, everything else can be worked out. It's all negotiation. And I think when you look at the Chinese, their perspective is different because their cultures and Africa's cultures are very similar. And I think that's why they're able to integrate so much easier than most. And I think when the West comes to Africa, they come with these rules and these infrastructures, and they try to plant that same infrastructure in Africa, and it doesn't work. You have to be creative in Africa. The mentality is different, the people is different, and terrain is different, environment is different, and you can't come with a U.S. proposition or a European proposition and apply that to Africa when the propositions there face a lot more challenges, and it's not as simple. So the Chinese were more patient. They actually are on the grounds to see what was happening and to know how to fix whatever certain challenges. But for the most part, when they say that the Chinese are robbing Africa, I actually disagree, because when they came in, they actually came with a barter system. Most times when the Europeans came to Africa, they pulled resources out, but they never pulled back in. Whereas the Chinese is a little bit different because they know that the Africans won't get funded for major projects. So what they decided to do is say, listen, we do need these resources. We're not going to lie to you. We need them. But we won't give you money. We'll just give you infrastructure. Basically, they'll build roads, bridges, roundabouts, in exchange for what that would naturally cost, they get that back in resources. I mean, I prefer that anyway, because when you look at a place like Africa, you can't give these leaders money. They're going to deposit it in Switzerland.
So talking about China's involvement in Africa, I have always said that China's involvement in Africa is not exactly a terrible thing. In fact, it's a somehow nice thing, right? And my only problem is when people come on air and hype the whole thing. People come on air and make it look like China is helping Africa. You know, someone like Akon, who is very, very popular, who is very, very influential, has to make a balanced argument about China's involvement in Africa. Because when he comes on air and just paint China as a very, very good friend or as someone whose only intention is to help Africa, it's somehow unbalanced. Because in as much as China is building a lot of stuff in Africa, like roads and bridges and buildings, they are also making a lot from Africa. And China is not in Africa just because China wants to be a friend of Africa or because China wants to help Africa. That's not the reason why China is in Africa. China is in Africa because China has seen an opportunity to make money from Africa, which in itself is not a bad thing. I have to mention that. If someone sees an opportunity and then take advantage of it, it's not a bad thing, okay? But for people to just come on air and start saying that, oh, China is a great friend, oh, China is doing so much for Africa, or if not of China, Africa wouldn't have been where it is now, and up and down and up and down. I just think that this is totally BS. It's totally BS. China is a good business partner, yes. China is doing things in Africa, yes. But is China really helping Africa? Are all the things that China is doing in Africa just as a matter of charity? No, they are not. China is doing those things in Africa because China is gaining from Africa. Instead of saying that China is helping Africa, you should say, or we should say, China is doing business in Africa, and China is a far more better business partner than the West. That one all of us can agree on. Because let's face it, the West have been to no good in Africa. So China, in that regard, is doing way more better than the West have ever done in Africa. But I must stress this again. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that China is in Africa because of what they are getting from the continent. China is not a charity organization. China is not a philanthropy, and we shouldn't expect China to give us anything for free. We have to work hard. We have to deserve every single thing we get from China. There is this one politician from Zambia. I think he's from I don't know if it's the Socialist Party in Zambia. He is so much in love with the Chinese and China, and wherever he goes, he makes sure to echo the narrative of China about how China is helping Africa. But I think I saw a comment on one of my videos on this channel where someone from Zambia was complaining how China has managed to buy most of the land in Zambia. I don't know how truthful that may be because that has not been independently verified by me or any member of our team. But I'm just saying what someone said in the comment section. That China has taken away all the farmlands in Zambia. That China is so involved in Gambia in such a way that you can hardly separate what is Gambia and what is China. So I hope that many African countries will not put themselves in a position whereby the mingling between China and their home country will be difficult to distinguish. I see China going around Africa and creating their schools, their Confucius Institute. Some of them even have Chinatown. Well, it's not a bad thing, but we should be careful about China's influence in Africa. Because there's this thing that always gets me annoyed when I talk about China involvement in Africa. The thing is, we the Africans, are saying that we do not want the West to influence us in our continent, that we want to be independent of outside influences. We are saying all this, like currently there is a revolution going on in West Africa where countries there are saying no to France. The people of those countries are saying that France has had enough and France has to go. Everyone you ask in those countries, they will tell you that we are done with France, we are done with the West, we want to do things by ourselves, we want to handle things by ourselves, we want to create a new path for us and for our country. That is what nearly every single person that you ask in Niger, in Mali, in Burkina Faso will tell you. So if we are doing all this to kick out the West, and on the other hand, we are welcoming in the Chinese and the Russians, what do we really think we are doing? Are we really trying to be independent, or are we just saying that we are going to exchange Peter with Paul? We all must begin to ask ourselves this question. We cannot say we do not want outside influences only to turn around and welcome in the Chinese and their influence and their money. Now, there was one person who argues, I think that was the same politician from Zambia, who argues that China does not interfere with the domestic politics of African countries, which I find that to be very shallowing or deceiving. that China does not interfere in the domestic politics of African countries. Really? Are you saying that to a child or what? They all do. The Russians, the Chinese, the Americans, the Europeans, they all interfere. If they find that a country has some weaknesses that they could exploit, they will do so. The Chinese do. The Americans do. The Europeans do. Even the Russians, they do. They interfere. If we truly want to be independent, we shouldn't just be saying it with our mouth. We should be putting some actions in place that will let others know that we truly want to be independent. You cannot say to someone, I want to be independent, and then turn around and ask them for favors. That is not independence. That is not independence. But you guys out there, share your thoughts and opinions with us in the comment section below. What is your take on Akon's remark about China's involvement in Africa? Should we just give a blind eye to what China is doing in Africa, all in the hopes that China won't interfere in Africa's domestic politics? Shouldn't we be paying much more attention to what China is doing in Africa? Share your thoughts and opinions with us in the comment section below, because like always, we love hearing what you have to say. And also, do not forget to like this video, share this video, follow our Facebook page, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel, because little bit of good way, like the one you're doing just now, help us a lot, and we shall forever be grateful to you. So thank you very much for doing just that. And like always, see you in the next one.